My name is Charles Albert Connelly. At least that's the name I used here in Leeds, where I was my wife Jane and I were among the first settlers of the town of Leeds in 1867. We'd been school teachers in Harrisburg, just down the road, but really probably shouldn't start the story there. I should probably start the story at the beginning of my life. I was born as James Larkin Foote on a large plantation in Alabama, northern Alabama, not too far from the Tennessee state line. My family there, my mom's family, had owned the plantation for quite a number of generations. And in fact, her family were among the earliest immigrants from England to Virginia, and became the patrician class, the landowners, and just generally migrated into the plantation and slavery. Like most Southerners, not much different. And of course, I grew up in that environment. I was quite proud of my Southern heritage. I was a true Southern gentleman. I remember I was pretty picky about, even as a young man, I addressed people as sir and ma'am, and I insisted on being addressed as sir myself. That changed when I became a Mormon when I moved out here, because then you got addressed as brother, but I could deal with that because it's a term of respect, and I felt fine about it after I got used to it. But just moving on, as I became around 20, I went off from my home in Alabama just to the nearest larger town, Nashville, to get an education. I planned to go to college and become a medical doctor. Started studying there. I was a little bit of a feisty and maybe a little bit heavy-handed in some of my dealings with the faculty people and my other students. I always was standing up for the South and the causes of the South, and I didn't like to hear too much about abolition, and I might have been a bit outspoken about it. So I ended up just moving on before I finished my medical degree in Nashville. Moved to Kansas first, and then crossed the plains, made my way towards San Francisco. Someplace along the way, I was actually arrested by the Union Army. Now, so I was born in 1832. This is probably just when the Civil War begins, and I'm again shooting my mouth off about the South and not taking any of the Union Army's, views of the Confederacy, and I'm not a combatant, but they arrest me and then they fine me $2,000. Put $2,000 in context in those years. A good house in an ordinary town, $2,000 would buy you 3 homes with land, okay? Especially down here in southern Utah, but even in northern Utah. So it was a hefty fine, but in addition to the fine, in order to get off and not go to prison, I had to give my parole, raise my hand, swear allegiance to the United States of America, and that I would have no allegiance to the Confederacy. And being a gentleman, once I gave that parole, I fully intended on keeping that. When I got to San Francisco, I was prosperous. I had a little bit of land there, some income, but I associated mostly with Southerners who were just as pro-Southern as I was, and they were going to make a voyage on a ship named the Chapman from San Francisco Harbor all the way around Cape Horn to New York, and they said they needed a surgeon, a ship surgeon, on the crew, and they asked me if I'd do it. I said, well, I'm not a medical doctor. I didn't finish my degree. They said, oh, it doesn't matter, but it'll be fine. So I signed on as the surgeon on the manifest for the ship. Before it sailed, however, it was taken, there was a plot by some of my friends who had asked me to actually take that ship and then use it to waylay other shipping from San Francisco headed back to the south or the east anyway, and to intercept gold shipments, intercept armaments, ammunition. And I didn't know about that plot, but I was on the manifest. The ship got taken by the local police and the Union Army, just captured before it left. Of course, they found all those documents, and I knew I was in big trouble. It was the kind of offense back then, it wasn't like you went to trial, it was like they had said, stand there, and then just shot you. Because you'd already given your parole, you broke it, so that was, it was pretty much I was in a lot of jeopardy. So I decided to make my way back to civilization from San Francisco and went through Central California and down, and was doing okay. I acquired some mules and some provisions for the journey, but I pretty much myself on my own. When I was doing fine until I got to Death Valley, and in Death Valley I was lost for probably close to 3 weeks. Could not find, running out of water, and finally someone found me, said, water's over there, the way out is that way, and if you keep going, you'll end up in southern Utah, maybe, if you're lucky. So continued my journey on, and I ended up in Parowan, Utah, just north of here, one freeway exit, and there were Mormons there, and when I arrived there, I arrived not as John Larkin Foote, surgeon, whatever. I arrived as Charles Albert Connelly, name of my cousin, and took his name, and right immediately I asked to and joined the Mormon church, asked to become a Mormon. They were very happy with that. The other thing is they asked me, I wasn't expecting this, we can tell that you're quite well educated. Would you like to be a school teacher in our town? And I said, yeah. They said, oh, well, we could pay you a little something, at least room and board, you clearly need something. They could tell how what poorly off I was at the time. And I taught school, and just probably a couple of weeks, I met this young lady named Jane Rowley. She was 16. I was at the time 32, teaching school. And I right away asked her if she'd be my wife. I was not planning on that. I wasn't really planning on being a Mormon. None of that was in my plans at the time, but it just seemed like the right thing to do in an absolute sort of way. So by the end of 1864, I got there in January, by December, she married me. And we ended up having a great life together. We had 12 children. We lived here in Leeds, right at center in Main Street, and just had a good life. I guess I should start out a little bit and say we had been married, but just married civilly. And after we moved to Harrisburg and taught there and then moved to Leeds in 1867, Jane asked if we could go get sealed in like a temple ceremony. There wasn't a temple, but we could go to Salt Lake to the what do you call it? Endowment house in Salt Lake, and have a ceremony, and we could be sealed for time and all eternity. I had no concept of what that meant, but my wife wanted it. I thought that would be a good thing to do, so agreed to go there. On the way up to Salt Lake, Jane asked if I would, for the ceremony, use my real name, John Larkin Foote, which I had told her was, by then I'd sort of confessed who I really wasn't. And we did. We got married in that special ceremony with the Larkin Foote name rather than the Albert Connelly name. And it was a good thing to do. We came back. We continued to be prosperous. That was 68 when we did that. So by 1870, I was making a living school teaching. Both of us taught school together mostly. I had learned to make shoes. I was a cobbler, so I could buy and sell shoes a little bit. mostly all of the transactions in Leeds were done in tithing script, just IOUs, Mormon paper that said who owed who how much money. We lived a good life. It was subsistence, but we were quite happy. In addition to my duties as a father and family leader, in school teaching, I took on some tasks of regularly I got elected to be election judge, a constable once in a while, partly because of my education background. They knew I could handle those things. But I started in 1870 when Pioche began to be a thriving mining community. I wasn't a great farmer myself, but I knew all the people from Leeds in the area. And I'd take local produce from here over to Pioche and sell it. And of course, they'd pay me in gold coin. And in Leeds at the time, that was a big deal. So I was, I guess, a little more popular, a little more, important to the community's economic life. And again, life went on pretty well. As a Mormon community, I became more Mormon as time went on. I started giving speeches in church, and I gave a couple of sermons where I was just, we are never going to give up polygamy, and just all of the causes. I was all in the new religion that I had adopted. But life changed in 1875 some. A gentleman came down from northern Utah named William Tecumseh Barbie, W.T. Barbie, and he came down looking for silver in the sandstone. He told us all about that. Of course, met all the people in town, and what do you want to participate or whatever in the new venture. One of the things by that August of 1875 he did was write a full-page article in one of the large Salt Lake papers. And he started out the article, the story, by saying, I came to southern Utah in search of filthy lucre, the root of all evil. And that's how he started out. And we all, of course, we read the paper, and we knew he was inviting basically a whole lot of people that would also search for the same root of all evil down to our town. And he described the geology of the place. You could see from what was written, you could see our community and where you would search for the sandstone that would bear the silver or have the silver in it. And we knew changes were coming pretty fast. And changes did come pretty fast. And most people believe, popular belief is that Mormons didn't participate in mining directly. But from, at least in my instance, that just didn't turn out to be true. Another gentleman named, from northern Utah came down. He was a mining engineer, a journalist, I think an attorney at law. And his name was Wells Spicer. And he promoted, again in the newspaper, our town, the Silver Reef, Leeds area. And in 1876, about a year after Barbie came down, he wrote a long column and described every mining venture, the mine name, the owner's names, all through like 30 or 40 different mines and different owners. And on that list, I owned 3 mines. So in a very short period of time, and you might ask, which I've asked as a ghost, and I really don't have much memory of this, how I ended up owning 3 mines in that short a time, because I was busy doing a lot of other things. And where would I find time to do prospecting? And I'd never done any before. So we'll just leave that question out there for a while, not answer it because I'm not absolutely sure, but I like to tell a little more in detail about the growth of Silver Reef and my part in it and Leeds. When we arrived here, first when we settled, I homesteaded 160 acres west of Leeds that people referred to for a long time, even to this last generation, as Connelly Fields, which is just west of town. I owned that, and I tried to start town, a new town there, that people could live there instead of Silver Reef, because I thought it was a good place and had water and things. But that didn't go anywhere, but I did do another venture with Wells Spicer, the lawyer from Salt Lake, and some of my Mormon friends. We added a subdivision to the north of Leeds called Spicer's Addition. And we were the landowners, the land sellers for that. And that was popular and it went pretty well. And I made some profit doing that. So I know I made profit from history. I know that I made profit in almost all my mining ventures. Not a lot, but I eventually sold each of the mines for some money. And significant amounts of money in the $3,000–4,000 range for each of the mines, which isn't, again, until you go back and think about how much money is, that was plenty for us. We were prosperous then instead of, working real hard. We stayed all through the boom in the bust, here. In the 1890s, I was very almost locally famous for the agricultural crops I grew, especially some wine. Because early on, everybody was growing wine and selling it to the miners. Later, it was something that you had to make good wine to sell, and I was able to make some good wine on my property and produce that as a venture. Late in my life, I know that I moved with my wife and some Kemple family members. My daughter had married into the Kemple family, one of my daughters, youngest, I think. And we moved to the Muddy down St. Thomas, Overton area, just in Nevada, for a short time in about 92, I think. We stayed there and we were successful there. Had moved from here. There was a little more water down there. Our family was growing. We needed a little more land. But then another 10 years later, less than that, probably about 1900, John Kemple, who I knew both from a family standpoint, and also, I don't know, some people say we were cousins. I have no memory of that, but we could have been. Anyway, John invited me to go down to Chloride, Arizona, and I had a contract delivering mail down there that had been arranged, and I was basically putting together some mining ventures with John Kemple down there, and they ended up being quite successful. But that's where I died in 1904, and I was buried in Chloride. Just as a aside, I want to talk about one article that I talked about, that newspaper article that Wells Spicer wrote, a long article. As a historian now, not as a ghost, I underlined all the names of the miners, the people who owned those mines in that article. And blue was a color for Mormons that I knew to be Mormons, light blue due to be Mormon sympathizers or friendly to the Mormons, like Barbie was, and like Spicer was. He owned mines, of course. And then red if they came from Pioche, or I knew them to be non-Mormon Gentiles that owned mines in 1876 in May. Turns out that article is mostly blue. There's only 3 lines. There are 3 people that I identified that were for sure Gentiles. So it's a kind of a myth that and I may have inherited my ability to do mining if John Kemple was my cousin. He was one of the first to discover silver here, down at the Adams House in Harrisburg. And he was in 76 when it boomed. He wasn't here. He was over in Kane County, in the Paria area, mining for copper. And he didn't arrive here. We saw him regularly, but only after about 1880, more consistently after 85. He was here and with us trying to put the old mines back together using leaching processes and things he knew about as a miner more than we did, our local people. But anyway, why I bring that up is Wells Spicer also moved about the mid-80s, 85, 86, down to Tombstone, Arizona. Another person I knew that went down there that was here was John Rice, the banker. And John went down there and after his wife died here, and pretty much in the Tombstone area as well. Wells ended up getting appointed to be Justice of the Peace in Tombstone. And probably his most memorable achievement in life was that he, as Justice of the Peace, I guess you've all heard about the shootout at OK Corral down in Tombstone. It's pretty famous, Wyatt Earp and his brothers, and it's pretty much a massacre of the other side. Anyway, Wells was the person who let the Earps go free, said he didn't think there was anything wrong that they did that day. So it's an interesting tie between our little modest town that was pretty law-abiding and some of the other Wild West stuff. So some of us did get a little more involved than others. That's the end of my story. Hope that does it.